Hi, this is Craig Stocks here at Utah Desert Remote Observatories. You can find us online at utahdesertremote.com. And today I want to talk about the principle and the value of non-destructive editing in Photoshop. So to look at the value of non-destructive editing, I'm going to use this image that I took the other night of the Andromeda galaxy. And after doing all of the processing, separating the stars, processing the galaxy portion, and then the stars separately in an LRGB image, put it all together, brought it into Lightroom, I've done all my final tweaks and crops and so forth. I noticed there's a satellite trail through here that I missed in one of the layers, back kind of in the beginning of the process. So with non-destructive editing, I can go back to that original and change it without having to redo anything else. And so that's what we're going to walk through right now. So I use Lightroom to keep track of all of my images. It's a combination of a digital asset management tool, in other words, a filing cabinet for your digital images. Plus it has some real nice basic editing tools. So I usually do my final tweaks in Lightroom, and that's also where I do my cropping. So for instance, this one right now is cropped to a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, the same as a high definition TV. But if I decided I wanted to make an 8 by 10, I could change the crop. But to edit this in Photoshop, what I'll do is just right click on the image and choose Edit in Adobe Photoshop. And I want to edit the original. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that I always save the images as a .psb, which is a Photoshop large document format that can handle huge documents. So here's the image in Photoshop, and all of my layers are intact, just the way I prepared it. So here's the stars, and I actually have two sets of stars in order to get the mixture of large and small stars, and then all of the various global edits. This is the color layer, so all that this layer is doing is adding color, and the luminosity is adding only the luminosity. And I believe this satellite trail is going to be here in the luminosity data. And if I turn that off, yep, you can see it went away. So what I need to do is edit this, and of course once you flatten an image, you have completely lost any semblance of non-destructive editing. Non-destructive editing really depends on a couple things. The basic principle is you never change a pixel on a pixel-bearing layer. In Photoshop, there are basically two kinds of layers. There are pixel-bearing layers, and that's the kinds of layers that have your image on it. And then there are adjustment layers, such as levels, curves, hue, saturation, color balance. And those change the appearance of everything below, but they don't change the pixels. So you can return to any one of those adjustment layers. For instance, if I open up this layer group for luminosity, here is a levels adjustment layer, and if I decide I want to make this image lighter or darker, I can come back, and all these adjustments are still live. I can make any changes I want at any time and not have to redo everything that I did before and after. And in this case, what we want to do is edit this satellite trail, and that's going to be on this layer that has the picture on it. But you'll notice that it looks a little funny. There's an extra little badge here. And that's because this is a smart object, and when you convert a layer or a group of layers even into a smart object, what Photoshop does is encapsulate the original data and then present you with a copy of the original data that you can apply smart filters to. The advantage of a smart filter is, just like an adjustment layer, you can come back and adjust it later. So in this case, the smart filter that I've applied is a high pass filter, and that lets you enhance local contrast. And if I want to change that filter, I just double click on the smart filter, and it reopens that filters dialog box, and I can change the intensity of this to make it stronger, weaker, whatever change I want to make. But in this case, I don't want to change the filter, I want to change the layer that it's being applied to. That's easy. You just double click on the layer thumbnail, and Photoshop will open as a new document that smart object source image. And so here is what was inside that smart object, and it was actually another smart object with a smart sharpen filter applied. So we need to go back another step to get to the original data. So I'll double click on this smart object icon. Photoshop now opened, so this is the original luminosity layer with no edits applied, and there's our satellite trail. Now if I want to edit this non-destructively, that means I don't want to change any pixels on this layer. I only want to hide this satellite trail. So I'm actually going to apply my edits to a blank layer sitting on top of this. So I'll add a blank layer, and now I'm going to choose the remove tool. This is new in Photoshop a year or two ago, and there's a couple of check boxes up here, and the one that I want is sample all layers. So what that means is it's going to sample any information on this blank layer as well as any other visible layers. Now those could be either above or below, so you need to be a little careful that when you're doing this with a blank layer, that only the layer below it is visible. So you may be able to see the brush here, and I can change the brush size to make it larger or smaller. And in this case, we want a very small brush, just a little bit bigger than the satellite trail. And I will just click at one end of the satellite trail. And now I can come up here and shift click, hold the shift key down and click again. And you can see that just drew a straight line, and this pink line shows me where it's going to be doing the healing. There's also a little bit right here, so I can click and shift click again. And I think that's all I need to address. So now that I've made my selections, I can click the check mark, and that will tell Photoshop to go ahead and do the calculations and heal or remove that satellite trail. And you can see now it's completely gone, but it's on its own layer. I can turn that layer on and off to see the impact. So now that I have done that, and again, I don't want to flatten this. I want to keep this as a separate layer. So I just close this image, this tab, and Photoshop will ask me if I want to save it. I'll say yes. And what it does is it updates the smart object that contained this layer, and that's the one that had the smart sharpen applied, if you recall. So as soon as it's done saving, now here's the version of the layer with the smart sharpen applied, and again you'll see that satellite trail is gone. So I just close this one, say yes, and it's going to now update the smart object in the original source document, that large .psb file. So here it is with all of my edits still applied just the way they were, but that satellite trail now is gone. So I just close this. It'll ask me if I want to save the document. Yes. So now Photoshop is resaving the .psb file that has this image of the Andromeda galaxy, and that will also update the view that I see in Lightroom. So as soon as this is done saving, we'll just pop back into Lightroom, and as it updates, now that satellite trail is gone. So it's basically that easy. Lost it here, there we go. Because this was all done non-destructively, when you find something that you want to go back and edit, you don't have to redo anything. If I decided that, well, that wasn't actually a satellite trail, that was a spaceship coming in from Mars, and we actually do want to save that and keep it in the image, no problem. we just edit in Adobe Photoshop. Yes, we want to edit the original. I could also have Lightroom create a copy of that complete image, which would be just one single layer. Rarely is that what you want to do. Here's the full image. Double click on the Smart Object to open the Smart Sharpen layer. Double click again. There's the image. There's the layer where I healed it. But if I turn off that healing layer, there's our satellite trail back. Save this. That updates the Smart Sharpen Smart Object. Smart Sharpen is just the name of one of the sharpening filters. It doesn't necessarily mean it was done to a smart object. And again, close this, say yes, update. And as you probably can surmise, that will take us back to the original large file. There's our satellite trail. And obviously if I save this now, it will save the original. And because the original gets updated or gets changed, Lightroom realizes that it was updated. And when we look at it in Lightroom, it will re-render and that satellite trail comes back. So you have all sorts of flexibility both as you're editing and later that day, next week, next month, next year. I could come back and make minor tweaks to this without having to redo anything. Anytime you copy a layer, duplicate a layer, flatten, merge layers, merge visible, any of those functions, I hear people describe those as being non-destructive. It's a kind of a pseudo non-destructive, I would say, but non-destructive means you don't have to retrace any steps, you don't have to redo any of the work that you've done. You can go directly back to the change that you made and undo it and get back to the original without having to then redo anything else. So I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, drop those in the comments down below. And as always, I hope you have a great day today and an even better night tonight under a clear, dark sky. Thanks.